Hey, what is up, everybody? I'm here to give you the Rush for Wrestling Review Series, Season 8, Episode 10. Now, pretty much, I'm doing this right after Episode 9. That's why I'm still wearing the same clothes and everything. So, I'm just doing all these episodes one after the other after the other. So, I just covered NXT TakeOver London in the last one. Now, I'm going to be covering NXT TakeOver Dallas. This was a pretty huge event for NXT because NXT really grew into this big brand. Um, it had really started to grow like in 2015. I would maybe say maybe towards the end of 2014, but they were the first live special and NXT arrival in 2014 when the WWE Network first launched, and NXT people would started talking about it more and more and more. NXT became a huge thing, and then at NXT Takeover All Evolution, everybody really started to talk about NXT after all that had happened, after the big superstars that had shown up there. And then going into 2015, NXT was probably the hottest thing going on in wrestling, at least WWE wise. They had the first special outside of Full Sail University at NXT Takeover Brooklyn, and it sold out. I always have to look this up, but just give me a second. So I'm trying to find this quote. Okay. But NXT TakeOver Brooklyn had an attendance of 15,589 people, and then continuing, NXT then would go overseas in London, um, and have a special called NXT Takeover London. There were 10,079 people in attendance. So they then had NXT Takeover Dallas, and this was huge because this was airing during WrestleMania weekend. This was the first time NXT had actually aired a special during WrestleMania weekend. They would always at least have like a live show or something there, but now they were airing a special, and it was a huge thing for NXT. Ironically enough, you could say that this show had a better build-up than WrestleMania 32 did that year because and the card was stacked. So NXT just really grew into this big thing to the point where now they were having specials during WrestleMania weekend, and everybody had gone for the NXT special. It was a huge thing. So now that I've kind of talked about that, let's talk about the actual matches on this show. We have an NXT Tag Team Championship match. We have two singles matches on the show, an NXT Women's Championship match, and then the main event, we're going to have an NXT Championship match. And I'll go over what the matches are after further when I get further along into this video. And now that I've done that, let me get to actually reviewing the show itself. I'm going to structure the show about the same, but the only difference is that I won't be covering the preview show because there wasn't a preview show. But I will be covering the pre-show itself and the actual show itself. So I hope you guys enjoy this video, and let's get started with it. Okay, so first we had the pre-show, and we had the panel of Renee Young, Lita, and Mauro Ranallo. And Renee Young, since this show has gone on to host other NXT special panels and the main roster panels, but not only does the main roster pay-per-view panels, and she's also the co-host of both Raw Talk and Talk and Smack, and she also is the backstage interviewer for SmackDown. Lita was just there for name recognition. She would do a few more panels for the main roster and NXT specials themselves, but then her contract expired in November of 2016. But she pretty much stayed in the same spot because she was like a former women's champion and everything. And Mauro Ranallo, it really makes me kind of sad a little bit to talk about Mauro Ranallo and see him like on commentary now. Obviously he was the play-by-play guy for SmackDown commentary. He was especially that way after the brand split. He was the SmackDown lead play-by-play guy, and for the SmackDown exclusive pay-per-views. But obviously after he ended up pretty much leaving the WWE because of his bipolar depression. Um, and obviously the whole stuff that happened between him and JBO, and now he's not going to be coming back to WWE. His contract expires in August, and it makes me feel a little bit better that there was a chance for him to come back to WWE, but it's only a matter of time, and it's just a matter of when. It really makes me kind of sad, and it makes me hate JBL hearing more Ronaldo's voice on this show, but that's just what I think. Alright, but continuing with the show itself, it just makes me a little sad to talk about it. Let me go over what the matches were for the show. We have an NXT Tag Team Championship match between American Alpha and the Revival. We have a singles match between Austin Aries and Baron Corbin. We have another singles match between Shinsuke Nakamura and Sami Zayn. We have an NXT Women's Championship match between Asuka and Bayley. And then we have the main event. It's an NXT Championship match between Finn Balor and Samoa Joe. So now that I've gone through that, let me go through what the actual matches themselves are on the show. First, we had the build-up for the NXT Tag Team Championship match. And the reason why this match was happening was because both of these teams actually pretty much formed and had their rise around the same time. The Revival were a team for a while, and they were a team for, at least about a year in 2015, but they really started to have their big break in the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classics, as well as American Alpha. The Revival knocked off the current NXT Tag Team Champions to make it to the semifinals. They nearly defeated Finn Balor and Samoa Joe in the semifinals, which was impressive. They would go on to win the NXT Tag Team Championships in, I believe, either October, November time-ish. And they would take out every tag team, and they would have successful NXT Tag Team Championship defenses. And they referred to themselves as the greatest tag team in professional wrestling. And that they were the top guys of NXT, and they were going to put down anybody that stood up to them. And they were just the dominant NXT Tag Team Champions. They were nothing. They did nothing fancy for moves. They had a catchphrase: "No flips, just fists," and that's exactly what the Revival were. And it was awesome. And meanwhile, you had American Alpha, who came together as a tag team because Jason Jordan was looking for a tag team partner, and Chad Gable wanted to be his partner, but originally Jason Jordan was denying being his tag team partner. So then eventually he caved in and let Chad Gable be his partner. And originally they were actually a heel tag team. They were heels. But then in their match at NXT TakeOver Respect in the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team tag team title, in the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Tournament semifinals match, the fans really got behind American Alpha, and they started chanting for Chad Gable, just really getting behind him, and they really got behind Jason Jordan as well. So they turned American Alpha face. They eventually got the tag team name American Alpha, and they just really started to stack up all these victories. They became an unstoppable tag team, and then eventually they ended up winning a number one contenders match to become the number one contenders to the NXT Tag Team Championships. And American Alpha, there were two guys that had competed in special amateur wrestling. Chad Gable ended up, I believe, competing in some sort of amateur wrestling Olympics or something, and they talk about how they didn't win, and they taught them that they have to fail before they become success. Jason Jordan has talked about how Chad Gable pretty much has saved his career with this tag team, and it led us to the American Alpha versus the Revival for the NXT Tag Team Championships. Will American Alpha going to finally prevail and finally have success and become the new NXT Tag Team Champions, or will the Revival going to persevere and stop their momentum and win the NXT Tag Team Championships? and it really worked. American Alpha were being pushed to the moon. They were a top face tag team, and the Revival were the top heel tag team, and they were two fresh tag teams going against each other. So it was awesome. And even though this feud, you could say they didn't have a lot of build behind it, but the progression, sometimes you don't need to physically feud with each other to have a build-up feud. The Revival were being built up as this big heel tag team, American Alpha as faces. We knew we would get in this match eventually, and we got it here at WrestleMania weekend. And then we had the build-up to the Austin Aries and Baron Corbin match. The reason why this match was happening was because Baron Corbin was upset with NXT general manager at the time, William Regal, who's still the general manager of NXT today. That he felt like he took away his NXT championship opportunities because he was in a triple threat match to become the number one contender to the NXT championship against Samoa Joe and Sami Zayn, and they ended up getting him into a double submission, and he ended up tapping out. So William Regal said that he lost the match. He's no longer going to become number one contender. So Baron Corbin threatened him, saying that since you're going to ruin my opportunities, stuff for me, I'm going to ruin stuff for you. So then William Regal announced that there was a new signee coming to NXT, and it was none other than Austin Aries, which was huge for NXT. Austin Aries was someone that wrestled all over the world. He wrestled in Ring of Honor. He even wrestled in TNA Impact Wrestling. He was the TNA World Champion. He was a former X Division champion in there, and he ended up leaving TNA in 2015, and which ended up being great for him because you could kind of see that he was just starting to lose his passion for wrestling, and then eventually he was brought into NXT, and he had his big reveal, but he ended up being attacked from behind by Baron Corbin because he wanted to ruin something from William Regal, so he ruined his debut. He beat the crap out of Austin Aries and hit the end of days on him on the floor, and it was a pretty good moment, but I didn't really care for the fact that they made Austin Aries kind of look like a chump in his debut, but they did make up for it later on. And then you see him look at Baron Corbin and say, an eye for an eye. So William Regal would make the match next for NXT TakeOver Dallas, and Austin Aries said that he's going to kick Baron Corbin's ass for cheap shotting him from behind. So overall, a decently built-up feud and a nice match for Austin Aries at NXT TakeOver Dallas. And then we have the build-up to the NXT Women's Championship match between Asuka and Bayley. And the reason why this match was happening was because Bayley had won the NXT Women's Championship at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn, and she was stacking up, she was pulling out gutsy performance after gutsy performance of retaining the NXT Women's Championship, and she was just really established herself as the babyface of NXT. She even cut this promo talking about how the NXT Women's division was starting to define women's wrestling and making it what it was, and how she wanted to inspire little kids to prove that they could follow their dreams just like she did. But then, meanwhile, you had Asuka, who had been signed to NXT in October of 2015, and she was just running roughshod over the division. She dominated everybody in the NXT Women's division, and they were both baby faces, which made it even better. So, William Regal announced that because they were so successful, Bayley was helping define NXT Women's Wrestling, making it what it was. Asuka was dominant. He announced that Asuka was the number one contender to the NXT Women's Championship at NXT TakeOver Dallas. And then you had certain women's wrestlers making the predictions. Some of them picked Bayley, some of them picked Asuka to win. And they're giving their thoughts about each competitor, talking about how Bayley was inspirational and how she's the perfect definition of a women's wrestler. Asuka, how she's dominant, and how when she gets that smile on, that it's lights out. So overall, a pretty good built-up feud here. It was two baby faces going at each other, and it made it awesome. And, it was two of the best women's wrestlers in NXT at the time fighting it out for the NXT Women's Championship, and that made the match even more awesome. So, good built-up feud there. Then we had the build-up for the Shinsuke Nakamura and Sami Zayn match. Sami Zayn had returned to NXT in December of 2016, coming off an injury, and pretty much he wanted to be the first superstar ever to win the to become a two-time NXT champion. But when he failed to win his number one contenders match against Samoa Joe, he shortly afterwards got called up to the main roster. But he was still wrestling in NXT actively. So William Regal said that he's been called people around the time were starting to call Sami Zayn the heart and soul of NXT because he had been there the longest than anybody. He made his debut in 2013, and William Regal wanted to give him the perfect opponent for NXT Takeover Dallas, and he gave him none other than new signee Shinsuke Nakamura. Shinsuke Nakamura got signed to NXT. He actually got signed at the exact same time as AJ Styles, Luke Gallows, and Carl Anderson got signed, and he was a huge star in Japan. He was the youngest IWGP Intercontinental Champion. He wrestled everybody all over the world, and he was probably one of the best and unique wrestlers in the world. You had people hyping him up like Finn Balor talking about how WWE is going to be the perfect place for Shinsuke Nakamura, how WWE was Shinsuke Nakamura needed, how it was AJ Styles' favorite opponent. And Finn Balor said to give him advice was to be himself. So overall, it was it. And then Shinsuke Nakamura cut a little video promo on Sami Zayn, saying that he'll see him at NXT Takeover Dallas, and he's gonna take over NXT and take over with his strong style wrestling. And people were questioning too whether or not Sami Zayn was gonna be focus on this matchup since he was up on the main roster, and he was possibly focusing on his upcoming Intercontinental Championship match at WrestleMania 32. But then afterwards, Kathy Kelly, who was a new interviewer at the time, interviewed Sami Zayn, and she asked him how he feels about coming into this weekend, and Sami Zayn says that he looks at Sami Zayn says that he looks at this weekend as the biggest weekend of his life, and he looks at this match as a big matchup for him because a lot of people are calling him the heart and soul of NXT, and he thinks that's very flattering, and he wants to cement his legacy, and he gets what Shinsuke Nakamura is trying to do. He wants to make a name for himself, but he's not going to make a name for himself off his expense, and that was a promo. It was actually a good promo by Sami Zayn, and it gave Sami Zayn a purpose about why he wants to win this match, because it's obviously you need to kind of give him a motivation. You can't just have him go out there and want to win the match for the sake of winning the match. So it made sense. So I did like that. Then it showed the unveiling of the of the American Dream Dusty Rhodes' statue. The whole Rhodes family was there. Dustin, who portrays Goldust, and Cody Rhodes, who at the time was portraying Stardust, and his wife Edian was there. And they kind of just give a big speech about him, and I thought it was a good speech. It's a shame what's happened to Cody Rhodes and Edian now that they're not with the company anymore, but it is what it is. And then we had the final build-up for the NXT Championship match between Finn Balor and Samoa Joe. And the reason why this match was happening was because Samoa Joe and Finn Balor were friends before they came to the WWE for years, and then Finn Balor came to WWE in 2014 at the end, and he ended up winning the NXT Championship in Japan in July of 2015. Samoa Joe came just before he won the title, and he debuted at NXT TakeOver Unstoppable. And then eventually they teamed up together to win the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classics, and Samoa Joe had asked Finn Balor for an NXT Championship match, and Finn Balor was going to give him one. But and William Regal said that he had to earn the title match, but Samoa Joe failed to get it. So on an episode of NXT, Samoa Joe attacked Finn Balor, turning heel, because he felt like that was something he had to do so he could get to the NXT Championship match. He felt like that, people are defined by two ways: the choices they make and the actions they put behind them. And he felt like that, and he said that Finn Balor came up to him and asked him to be his partner to win the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classics, but he put no action in giving him an actual title match. And he says that that he was owed an NXT Championship match the second that he got here. Finn Balor talked about how he could have just asked for a title match, and he would have given him one, and how he threw away a 10-year friendship. So then eventually they had the match at NXT TakeOver London, where Finn Balor was able to win the match and retain the NXT Championship. And Finn Balor said that match was not a battle, that was a war, and he just barely survived. So Samoa Joe wanted a rematch because Finn Balor said that. You know, they had the triple threat match with him and Zayn, like I talked about, and then where they had the double submission. So then eventually Samoa Joe defeated Sami Zayn in a 2 out of 3 falls match to become the #1 contender to the NXT Championship. And Samoa Joe would take out everybody on the roster, trying to send a message to Finn Balor. Finn Balor talked about how Samoa Joe isn't going to be him. It's going to be just like NXT TakeOver Dallas. And at the go-home show, Samoa Joe and Finn Balor ended up having a huge brawl that had to get broken up by security. So that kind of led us to this match. And overall, it was a very well built-up match. And that's the entire pre-show. Overall, I actually enjoyed the pre-show. I thought it was fairly solid. I thought Mauro Ranallo gave a lot of great analysis to the show. And I liked watching all the build-up and stuff, too. So overall, a good pre-show. So now I'm going to cover the actual show itself. Okay, so I apologize, but I ended up going to sleep because I was tired. But I'm going to try to get these done today. Then we got the actual show itself. It's sort of a nice little build-up package talking about all the great wrestlers that came from Texas since they were in Dallas, Texas, and all the wrestlers from the future. I thought that was actually a good video package. And we had Tom Phillips and Corey Graves on commentary for this show. And obviously, you know, Corey Graves continued to work down in NXT for a while. He worked there up until 2017, but as he was down there, he would get called up to the main roster after the brand split and do commentary for Raw. And then eventually, after 205 Live's inception, he was the heel commentator on 205 Live and Raw too as well. And then eventually, it just got to be too much for him. He had so many obligations, he stepped away from NXT because he felt like, you know, he didn't really need to be down there anymore. And Tom Phillips, obviously, I've had my fair share of things to say about him. He screwed people out of his job. He says he sends text messages to people on a plane saying that he wants to face fuck them. And for some reason, he's the lead play-by-play guy on NXT now. The play-by-play commentator for SmackDown, and now the play-by-play commentator for 205 Live. I don't know why. It's weird. But then we had the first actual match on the show. It was an NXT Tag Team Championship match. NXT Tag Team Champions, The Revival versus American Alpha. And this actually was a good way to start off the show. It was actually a good tag team match. Chad Gable chain wrestles with Dawson in the beginning of it. He hits a lot of amateur wrestling moves on him. And Dawson kind of gets the upper hand, and he kind of gives him like a nonchalant, like sarcastic pat on the face, congratulated him, and then Chad Gable fights back with some more amateur moves, and he pats him on the face. And then both tag teams get in the win and kind of start having like a little intense confrontation with each other. And then then American Alpha get the upper hand on the Revival at every turn. But the Revival try to cheat. They try to hit like a double suplex type move on Chad Gable, but Jason Jordan had the referee distracted, but he shoves the ref and he saves Chad Gable, and American Alpha hit double drop kicks on the Revival. Then they hit double German suplexes on him. They Irish whip them all the way on the outside and have them collide with each other. And they're just pretty much out wrestling the Revival at every turn. But then the Revival try to do some heel tactics. Dash tries to tag himself in and take a cheap shot while Chad Gable was not looking, but Gable ends up hitting a right hand on him. And then he goes to go after Dawson, but then Dash hits a clothesline on the outside, and the Revival pretty much dominate and ground and pound Chad Gable for a while. And they really get the heat on him, preventing him from making the tag to Jason Jordan. Eventually, he hits a double DDT on the Revival, and he tries to go make the tag, but Dawson pulls Jordan down off the apron before he can get there, and this charges Jordan to distract the referee again. The Revival hit like it was supposed to be like a power bomb, like Doomsday device, clothesline, but they kind of messed it up because Dash didn't get Chad Gable all the way up, so that when Dawson went up off to do the clothesline, he kind of completely missed Chad Gable, so that was a little bit of a mess up. I just think there was some miscommunication there. And Dash tries to pin him, but the referee realizes he's not the legal man, so Dawson has to get in there and pin him himself. And then eventually, Chad Gable gets the hot tag on Jason Jordan, and he starts going off on the Revival. And he really starts going to town on him, but eventually Dash tries to pin Jason Jordan while Dawson's using the ropes for leverage, but Jordan kicks out. Then Jason Jordan goes for a roll up on Dash, but Dawson hits an uppercut on him, and he kicks out. And then Jason Jordan hits a double German suplex. He hits a double shoulder tackle on the Revival, and then he hits a roll up, but Dawson kicks out, and then Jason Jordan goes to charge in the corner onto Dawson, but Dash pulls him out of the way, so Chad Gable tags himself in. He exchanges some roll-ups on Dawson. It was actually a nice sequence, but then eventually Jason Jordan tags himself in, and he hits a shoulder thrust in the corner, like a running shoulder thrust on Dawson, and American Alpha hit Grand Amplitude on Dawson for the win, and they become the new NXT Tag Team Champions. It was actually a really good tag. It was actually a good tag team match, good way to start off the show, and it was a good feel-good moment. Finally, having American Alpha win the NXT Tag Team Championships. They were really over with the fans at the time, and it was really good. It was really good, and obviously this led to afterwards. They would continue this feud at NXT Takeover the End. The Revival would regain the NXT Tag Team Championships from American Alpha, becoming the first and only team to become two-time NXT Tag Team Champions, and then they would blow the feud off at NXT Takeover. Well, on an episode of NXT where they had a 2 out of 3 falls match for the titles, where the Revival retained the championships again, and then American Alpha afterwards would get called up to SmackDown because of the brand split, and they would go on to have a decent one of the SmackDown Tag Team division, but they're not really over with the fans because they don't really do what they did on NXT to get them over on the main roster. I don't know why, like cutting promos and stuff. But they did win the SmackDown Tag Team Championships in December, but they ended up dropping them in March. And they're pretty much in an inconsequential role right now, which is a shame for the American Alpha. The Revival went on to have a few more great matches down in NXT, and eventually they lost the NXT Tag Team Championships at NXT TakeOver Toronto. And then they would have a few more great matches in NXT, and then they would get called up to the main roster on Raw, and pretty much Dash is injured at the moment, so it's just kind of Dawson, so the Revival is kind of missing out of action at the moment. But overall, both teams benefited from this. They both became the top tag team in NXT, and they both are doing fairly well on the main roster. I mean, the Revival, one of them, Dash ended up getting hurt, so it's kind of tough to say, but American Alpha isn't doing as well as they should be, but they're doing, I would say, okay, I guess, because they did win the SmackDown Tag titles, but they're pretty much inconsequential at the moment. But yeah, this was a good tag match here. Okay, so the next match was Baron Corbin versus Austin Aries, and I thought this was a decent match here. I'll talk about what my issues were with the match. I'll just break down the match first. Austin Aries fires away at Baron Corbin immediately. He tries to chop him down the best he can, but Baron Corbin's kind of a little bit too powerful for him. So eventually he hits a rolling elbow, which knocks Corbin out of the ring, and then he hits a axe handle off the top rope outside while Corbin's on the outside. He beats him up on the outside. And then eventually Baron Corbin gets the upper hand on Austin Aries. He hits a clothesline on him, and then he you know, hits a bunch of rights and left hands on him while he's on the floor. He throws him shoulder first into the steel post, and Corbin really starts to target the shoulder of Austin Aries. He gets him into a nerve hold for a while, and he's talking trash to him. He's saying, no one even cares that you're here. And when, like, he doesn't think he tapped out, Baron Corbin gets in his face like, ring the bell, it's over. And then Baron Corbin hits a ton of elbows right in the corner. And then eventually Austin Aries hits a drop kick, and he starts to make his comeback. He hits a ton of elbow smashes right on him while he's into the back of the neck. He hits a neck breaker in the ropes. He hits a drop kick in the ring, which Corbin kicks out of. He hits a drop kick while he's in the corner, a suicide dive. And then he goes to charge at Corbin on the outside. Corbin hits a deep six on the floor, and Corbin tries to get Aries counted out, but Aries just beats the count just before the 10 count. And then Baron Corbin goes for the end of days, but Aries flips out of it, hits a roll-up on him for the win, and Austin Aries went over. You know, it made sense because it was his debut match. My only issues with this match is I didn't think this was the best showcase for Austin Aries in his first match in NXT. I just thought he could have had a better opponent. I didn't think the opponent that he had was, you know, a good opponent for him. And another issue is that he didn't really definitively beat Baron Corbin. I kind of wish he would have made him tap out with the last chancery, or had beaten him with the Brainbuster, but since they won't let him use the Brainbuster, I kind of wish they would have let him tap out to the last chancery, because this finish would have been fine had there been a return match, but there wasn't a return match, because the aftermath of this match, I'll tell you what it was the night afterwards. Baron Corbin was called up to the main roster. He went on the night afterwards at WrestleMania 32 to win the third annual Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, and he pretty much now was on the main roster, and he's had a pretty dominant reign on the main roster. He was drafted to SmackDown in July due to the brand split, and he's kind of one rough shot on SmackDown there, and he wrestled for the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania 33, but failed to win it. And now he's in a feud currently with Sami Zayn, so he's not in a bad spot. I hear they want to make him the top heel on SmackDown. They want to put the WWE Championship on him, which I think would be awesome for him. They want to have him win Money in the Bank, so that's good for Baron Corbin. But yeah, like I said, there was no return match out of it because he was off. Baron Corbin was off NXT. Austin Aries would continue to be on NXT, and he would have a pretty decent run in NXT. He went on to face Shinsuke Nakamura at NXT TakeOver The End, and he had some good matches down in NXT. But then he ended up getting injured, so then he ended up doing commentary on 205 Live while he was injured. Then eventually he got officially called up as a wrestler in March of 2017, and he wrestled for the Cruiserweight Championship at WrestleMania 33, but he didn't win the championship, and then he had like a rematch for it at Payback 2013. No, 2013. No, he wasn't even in the company in 2013. At Payback 2017, but he failed to win. But he failed to win again, and now he's the number one contender to the Cruiserweight Championship, and he's probably like one of the top stars in the Cruiserweight division, so that's a pretty decent spot for Austin Aries to be in. It is kind of a shame that he is in the Cruiserweight division, though, because nobody really cares about that division, just being honest. And, a lot of people, it kind of makes it tough for people to care about Austin Aries. What I think they should do, as I was just thinking about this, is it seems like he's going to be stuck in the Cruiserweight division. If you want to get him off the Cruiserweight division during the next, Superstar Shake-Up or whatever, draft him over to SmackDown, and then he can wrestle for the U.S. title, or he can wrestle and possibly win the WWE Championship. He could be a huge star. Or you could have him lose a match where if he loses, he's out of the Cruiserweight division, and then you can have Austin Aries go after the Intercontinental Championship and maybe even the WWE Universal Championship. So those options, because I think Austin Aries, he could be in the Cruiserweight division for the moment, but I think eventually you need to get him out of the Cruiserweight division, have him excel up the code. But that's just my thoughts. But overall, this match I thought was I still thought the match was decent. The crowd definitely made the match, and I thought, it wasn't a terrible match. I didn't really think this was a good showcase for Austin Aries, and I just didn't really care for that finish. Okay, so next match was Sami Zayn versus Shinsuke Nakamura, and this was Shinsuke Nakamura's first match in WWE. also in NXT, but since you know NXT's WWE, same thing. Um, and going into this match, I knew nothing about Shinsuke Nakamura. I never even heard of him before, so I didn't really know what to expect when I saw Shinsuke Nakamura. Obviously, I knew what to expect from Sami Zayn because I had known who he was, but Shinsuke, never had heard of him, so I was like, I wonder what I'm going to expect. Is it going to be somebody that I like, or is it going to be somebody that I don't like? And then his entrance happened, and when he comes out and you first see Shinsuke Nakamura, you can definitely feel like he's definitely unique. He has a unique look to him, and he just feels unique. He feels like a different kind of wrestler. And that's kind of what I felt about Shinsuke Nakamura when he first wrestled. And once he actually got into the win, I really enjoyed his matches. So let me talk about this match. And obviously, Sami Zayn, who was the heart and soul of NXT. And I think Shinsuke Nakamura picked a perfect time to come to WWE because there were superstars like Sami Zayn, like Austin Aries, like Samoa Joe, Finn Balor down there that he could work with. If he had come down there probably sooner, he would have had a tougher time adjusting to the WWE style of wrestling because he wouldn't be there with wrestlers that he already knew, and that would be able to work his style. So I think he came to the WWE at a perfect time. Sometimes I do wish though he could have come when he was younger because he's definitely a superstar I would want a bit of company around, but because now he's like 35 years old now, he's a little older. It's kind of tough to build the company around him. But let me talk about the match itself. It was, Sami Zayn versus Shinsuke Nakamura. And both superstars start feeling each other out. They start chain wrestling each other. Nakamura tried to kick Sami Zayn, but Sami Zayn sees it coming. Sami Zayn starts to get the better a little bit of Shinsuke Nakamura. He hits a couple of arm drags on him. Shinsuke Nakamura kicks him in the ribs a couple of times. And he goes to go off the top rope. Sami Zayn knocks him off with a right hand. And then Shinsuke Nakamura hits an enzuigiri on Zayn while he's on the apron. He hits a knee drop right to the back of Zayn's head. He hits while he's on the apron too, he hits a knee drop while Zayn's in the ring. And they both just start going back and forth. Sami Zayn hits a suplex on Nakamura. He hits a crossbody on him. But Nakamura kicks out of both fins. And they both just really started to go back and forth against each other. Sami Zayn hit a Michinoku driver on Shinsuke Nakamura, and then Sami Zayn and Nakamura traded right hands towards each other. They just traded blow after blow after blow, which ended up busting Shinsuke Nakamura open. And Shinsuke Nakamura ended up getting the better of the striking, and Nakamura went to hit a bunch of knees to the face of Sami Zayn, went to bounce off the rope. Sami Zayn hit a wicked clothesline, nearly taking Nakamura's head off. Sami Zayn hit a plancha on the outside, then a second crossbody, which Nakamura kicked out of. What else? And then Nakamura tried to get Sami Zayn into a cross arm breaker, but Sami Zayn held his arms together so that way Nakamura wouldn't be able to get the full move in, but then he turned it into a triangle choke, which Sami Zayn was able to fight out of. Sami Zayn got Nakamura into the Koji clutch, which Nakamura was able to reverse into a pinfall. Nakamura hit a kick to the ribs on Sami Zayn while he was on the top turnbuckle. Then what else? Nakamura hit a reverse exploder suplex, went for the Kinshasa, but Sami Zayn countered into the Blue Thunder Bomb, covered him. Nakamura kicked out. Sami Zayn tried to go for the Haluva kick. Nakamura reversed it. And then Sami Zayn tried to hit the DDT through the ropes while Nakamura was on the outside. Nakamura countered into a kick to the head. And then he went to go off the top rope. Sami Zayn went for the superplex, but Nakamura fought out of it, and he hit a knee right to the back of Sami Zayn's head while he was on the second turnbuckle, and then he hit the Kinshasa for the win. But the crowd really made this match as well. They were chanting all types of stuff during this match. They were chanting Olay. They chanted for both wrestlers. They also, the match was really good. The match was like so good. The fans started to chant "Fight Forever," um, which was now which is now a common chant in wrestling. And that chant started right here with this match, and both I thought these guys had really good chemistry with each other. Afterwards, after Shinsuke Nakamura celebrated, he goes to shake Sami Zayn's hand in respect, and they hug it out. And Sami Zayn puts Nakamura hand up, really putting him on the map. And this was pretty much Sami Zayn's last match in NXT. He has a nice little send off. They play his music, and he leaves. And Sami Zayn, I think, is definitely someone that's missing NXT. He pretty much was the heart and soul of NXT. And yeah, Sami Zayn definitely went out on a great note. He went out having a great match, and he put over a new star. He pretty much put Shinsuke Nakamura on the map in NXT and helped him really elevate him. Obviously afterwards, Sami Zayn pretty much went up to the main roster. He really hasn't had much success on the main roster. He didn't end up winning the Intercontinental Championship ladder match the next night at WrestleMania 32. He pretty much had a but pretty much he didn't have much victory down in on the main roster. He did get a big win at Battleground, but it didn't really benefit him too much. And then eventually he was drafted to Raw after the brand split. Had no success on Raw. Pretty much was jobbed out. They pretty much made him look like a geek. Then he was traded to SmackDown because of the Superstar Shakeup. Now he's currently in a feud with Baron Corbin, but yeah, he still hasn't had much success on the main roster, which is kind of a shame. Hope he can finally find that success, but I just don't think they see Sami Zayn as a top guy, so that's a shame. Shinsuke Nakamura, however, went on to pretty much become the face of NXT. He went on to defeat the best in NXT. He defeated Austin Aries at NXT TakeOver at the end. He won the NXT champion. Well, then he defeated Finn Balor after that on an episode of NXT. He won the NXT championship at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2, and that's kind of when he was started to get established as the face of NXT. But then he went on to lose the NXT championship at NXT TakeOver Toronto. Regained it in his home country in Japan a couple of weeks later. But then he lost the championship at NXT TakeOver San Antonio, and then he went on to wrestle his final match at NXT TakeOver Orlando, and then right afterwards, he was called up to the main roster on the SmackDown brand, and he's pretty much just about to have his first match on SmackDown tonight at Backlash, which is huge for Shinsuke Nakamura. They don't really, I don't think, get how to portray him, though, because they're trying to portray him as the artist when he's the King of Strong style, so I kind of don't like that part of it. But I can't wait to see him actually finally wrestle on SmackDown. And another possibility is we could see this match again, because now Sami Zayn and Shinsuke Nakamura are both on SmackDown. There could be a possible chance we'll see this match again. I don't know if it will be as good as this match that they had, but only time will tell, right? But overall, really good match. Actually, I shouldn't say really good match. It was an awesome match. Okay, so next match was an NXT Women's Championship match. NXT Women's Champion Bayley versus Asuka. And this match was another good match. It was really interesting because you had Shinsuke Nakamura, who was from Japan. You had Asuka, who's from Japan. It was a really interesting time to be a Japanese wrestling fan, because you had people from Japan representing Japanese, and it was just something you wouldn't really see that was very common in the WWE. They were starting to take over. And this match was another really good match. Not as good as the Shinsuke Nakamura Sami Zayn match, but still a good match. Both women start chain wrestling each other, and then they both try to hit their signature moves. Like Bayley tries to hit the elbow drop while Asuka's sitting down. Asuka tries to hit the kick, but they both keep reversing each other's moves. And then Bayley hits a Asuka hits a hip attack on Bayley. She goes for a second one, but Bayley moves out of the way and hits a clothesline on Asuka. Then she hits an elbow drop while Asuka's stuck in the tree roll position, a cross body. Asuka kicks out of all of those. Asuka fights back. She hits a suplex on Bayley. But then she also, afterwards, Bayley hits a Hurricanrana from the top rope. Then she gets into a guillotine choke, but Asuka's able to fight out of it. Bayley hits like a head scissors on the outside. Well, on the outside. Then she goes to continue to build momentum. Asuka hits a drop kick on her. Then she hits a drop kick on the off the middle turnbuckle, and she hits a ton of kicks on Bayley and just really starts going off on her. She gets her into a cross arm breaker, but Bayley locks her arm so Asuka can't fully get the move in on her. But then she reverses it into a Fujiwara armbar, which Bayley's able to get to the ropes for. Then Bayley starts to hit a bunch of submissions on Asuka. She hits a like an armbar. She gets her into a knee bow. And she gets her into another submission. I forget exactly what it was, which Asuka reversed into an ankle lock. And then eventually Bayley hits the submission where she stretches Asuka's arms back, which was awesome. And Bayley tries everything that she can to get Asuka to submit or to beat Asuka, but nothing's working. Eventually Asuka hits a kick right to Bayley's head, and then she gets her into the cross arm breaker, and Bayley is able to fight out of it, but then she immediately puts her in the Asuka lock, and she's in this move for about a minute. And this causes Bayley tries to fight out of it at first, but then eventually she just ends up passing out, and Asuka wins the match and becomes the new NXT Women's Champion, and she pretty much won this title 6 months after her debut, and Asuka had won roughshod over the NXT Women's title, and it was, the NXT Women's division, and it was finally time for her to win this NXT Women's Championship, and it really worked. I thought that, this was the perfect time to put the title on Asuka, so it worked. And the aftermath, they didn't have a rematch right away because Bayley ended up getting injured storyline-wise, and they wanted to have Bayley have the road back to the NXT Women's Championship, which I thought really worked. So then eventually they would have the rematch at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2, where Asuka would win the match again and successfully defend the NXT Women's Championship. Then eventually Bayley would go on to be called up to the main roster on the Raw brand. She ended up winning the Raw Women's Championship in February of 2017. Then she successfully defended it at WrestleMania 33. And then she lost the title at Payback. And then Asuka pretty much went on to win roughshod over the NXT Women's Division. She's beaten everybody there was to beat. Asuka's still undefeated. She, I think, has the longest reigning undefeated streak in professional wrestling in history. Of any company, she's the longest reigning NXT Women's Champion in history, and I believe she's the longest reigning NXT Champion of any kind in NXT. Asuka's gone on to become a huge star in NXT, and I think that's just awesome for Asuka. That she's able to become this big dominant superstar, and that they've been able to tell a story with her, and I just think that's awesome. So overall, both women really benefited from this match, and I think that's great. Okay, so then we had the main event, but before I get there, I want to talk about something else that happened before the main event. We had a sighting of a certain free agent that was on this show. So for every NXT special event, they like to show celebrities or wrestling legends in the crowd. That's somewhat the reason I look forward to watching these specials, to see who's going to be there. And one of the people that was there was none other than Bobby Roode. Now, Bobby Roode, I don't remember exactly, but I believe in early February, maybe late January-ish, left TNA Impact Wrestling, and this was the first time he had been seen since he had left TNA Impact Wrestling. So this was pretty much kind of to make you wonder if he had signed with NXT, and we found out that he did end up signing with NXT. We would see him for the next few weeks, talking with William Regal, and if he eventually would make his debut in NXT, talking about how he was going to make NXT a better place, and make it his NXT, make it just for the big businessmen. And he would have his first match at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2, and then eventually he went on to defeat Shinsuke Nakamura for the NXT Championship at NXT TakeOver San Antonio, and he's pretty much the top guy in NXT. He's the big heel of NXT, and he's been doing some great stuff in NXT, so I was really happy to see him on this show. You can definitely see that he had more of a passion for wrestling, because he had mentioned before that when he was in TNA Impact Wrestling, he would just kind of felt like he didn't have the same passion for wrestling. He was going to walk away from the business. But then I think he said signing with NXT gave him that new passion, so that was awesome. But on to the main event, though. It was a NXT Championship match. NXT Champion Finn Balor versus Samoa Joe. And Finn Balor had his big demon entrance. He came out with a chainsaw, kind of like maybe like Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th. And that was actually pretty damn awesome, actually. He didn't come out, obviously, with a blade, but it was still awesome. And this match, I thought was good, but it was kind of ruined, and I'll talk about that in a second. So, Finn Balor and Samoa Joe start brawling with each other. Samoa Joe hits a knee right to the ribs of Balor, which causes Balor to hit his forearm right to the head. Samoa Joe threw him in the corner. And you see that Samoa Joe's busted open. Like, right in his eye, blood's gushing out. Which I didn't mind too much. It made the story feel personal, and I mean, it was an accident anyways. But I'm gonna get into why this ruins the match. So Finn Balor and Samoa Joe continue brawling with each other. Balor throws him out of the ring. He hits a flip dive, taking out Samoa Joe. And then the referee steps in to try to close up Samoa Joe's cut, which everybody booed. But but Joe and Balor still continue on with the match. Joe refuses medical attention, and this is kind of like a legit shoot in a way. He really did get cut open, and he really was I think they were Samoa Joe and Finn Balor were still trying to work the match. So, but then eventually Samoa Joe tosses Finn Balor over the barricade and completely takes out a security guard, which was kind of funny. And the referee still has to go in there and close up his cut. And everybody booed that. And I hated it myself. Because it kind of ruined the match. Like, I'm not really saying that I like seeing blood and stuff, though. But if the wrestler bleeds, I always kind of say just let him bleed. You know, it kind of adds intrigue to the match. Like, I'm not saying, like, there was no reason for blood to be in this match, but just let him bleed, because it will show that you can really get hurt doing this type of stuff, and, you know, it just was stupid that they tried to cover it up. But the way they did it in this match was even stupider. But then Finn Balor, you see him get to his feet, and you see he has that demonic look on his face. He takes out Samoa Joe with a dive off the guardrail, and he continues to take out, to dominate Samoa Joe, but eventually Samoa Joe's able to get the upper hand. He hits a Uranagi on Finn Balor, throws him out of the ring. He hits a suicide dive on him, and then the referee, just during the middle of all this, closes up Finn Balor, Joe, and the fans chanted everything. They chanted bullshit at it. They chanted fuck PG. It was stupid because it ruined the match. Like, afterwards, Finn Balor got to his feet, and he kind of just had to sit there and wait for him, and it was stupid. But then the match continued. Joe hit a splash at an Enziguri in the corner, and he continued to dominate the matchup. The match was starting to get going, but then they have Samoa Joe close it up again, which everybody booed. Then Finn Balor started to make like somewhat of a comeback. Samoa Joe then hit an Enziguri on Balor again, dominated the matchup some more, hit a powerbomb into a Boston Crab, then into a crossways, which Balor counted into a double stomp. And then you think like Balor's gonna have this comeback. Then they go close it up again, and everybody booed that and chanted "Let Joe bleed," which I agreed. And then Finn Balor started to make his comeback. He hit a bunch of chops on Joe. He threw him outside the ring. Hit a drop kick from the while he was on the outside, hit a soccer ball kick from the apron, and he went for the sling blade. Joe counted into a belly-to-belly suplex, covers him. Balor kicks out. Then he hits the sling blade, goes for the drop kick. Joe moves out of the way, hits a senton. And the match then really started to get going. Finn Balor hits a ton of drop kicks and a sling blade. Samoa Joe, but then Balor goes to go for the coup de grace. Joe counters into the muscle buster, covers him. Balor kicks out. And then Balor really starts to go off on Joe. He hits the sling blade on him, the drop kick in the corner, the coup de grace, and then he goes for the 1916, which was a new finisher he had incorporated. And Joe counters into the Corkia clutch, but then Balor, to get out of it, runs across the ropes and hits like a roll-up on Joe. And the referee counts 3. Balor wins the title. Didn't mind the finish too much. It did show that Balor just barely escaped with that NXT championship. And afterwards, Joe's pissed that he lost. He walks away. And him and Balor have like an intense stare down, showing that this feud wasn't over. Joe said, showing that Joe had him, that Balor just barely escaped with the title. And it made sense to have Finn Balor win the match at the time because everybody had been talking he was possibly going to be called up to the main roster the night after WrestleMania 32. And it would have been cool and it would have made sense. But Finn Balor was still kind of the face of NXT. There was no one really ready to take his spot yet. So it made sense to have Finn Balor retain his championship. And like I said, the match still ended up being pretty enjoyable. But it was just hurt by the fact that they kept trying to cover up Samoa Joe while he was bleeding by those dumb PG rules. And I'm kind of thinking, why did they have to stick to those rules any goddamn ways? Because if they were on their WWE network, they run that stuff. Why did they cover up the blood? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And it kind of ruined the match because every time the match would get going, they would stop the match and have it get covered up. And yeah, it was just stupid. So like the beginning portion of the match really didn't get going. Once it got towards the end, it did. But yeah, the match definitely was ruined by the whole PG WWE rules thing. And this match really had all the hype behind it. You know, this was the big rematch between them, and you really had a chance to deliver with this match, and then they kind of ruined it. So, yeah, overall, this match didn't deliver like it should have because of those standards. But it's not the performance fault. They had to deal with those BS rules. But they still were able to pull out a good match given those circumstances. So I do got to give them a lot of credit there. Alright, so now I'm going to give you my overall thoughts on the show. I'm going to give my star ratings for each match, and I'm going to actually then give just what my general overall thoughts on the show are. So for the NXT Tag Team Championship match, I'm going to give that match 3 stars. I thought it was a good opening tag team match, and the right team went over, and it was a good seeing American Alpha pull out the victory. For the Austin Aries Baron Corbin match, I'm going to give that match 2.5 stars, just because I didn't think that match was a very good showcase for Austin Aries, and I didn't really care for the finish too much. For the Shinsuke Nakamura Sami Zayn match, I'm going to give that match 4.5 stars because it did help elevate a new talent in Shinsuke Nakamura. It was a good send-off match for Sami Zayn, and the match just was really good in win-wise too. And for the NXT, and for the NXT Women's Championship match, I'm going to give that match 3.5 stars, pretty much for the same reason for the Sami Zayn Shinsuke Nakamura match, except I enjoyed the Sami Zayn Shinsuke Nakamura match a little bit more. But, you know, the right person went over in the NXT Women's Championship match in the right way. And then for the NXT Championship match, I'm going to give that match 3 stars, just because of the PG rules kind of ruined this match, where they were trying to clean up Samoa Joe while the match was going on. But I still thought the wrestlers were able to pull off those circumstances and still have a good match at the end once the match was finally able to get going. So that was good to hear. So I'm going to repeat my star ratings. So for the NXT Tag Team Championship match, I'm giving that match 3 stars. For the Austin Aries Baron Corbin match, I'm giving that match 2.5 stars. For the Shinsuke Nakamura Sami Zayn match, I'm giving that match 4.5 stars. For the NXT Women's Championship match, I'm giving that match 3.5 stars. And then for the NXT Championship match, I'm giving that match 3 stars as well. But overall, I thought the show really delivered. It definitely delivered to the hype. You know, this show, they really put a lot of effort in building up. I thought the show did feel like it was a big show, like an NXT show you would see during WrestleMania weekend. Ironically, had I not gone to WrestleMania 32 that year, I would have actually said that this show was the best wrestling show of the weekend, because it flowed really well. And you know, there was not really like a bad match on the show. Like, you know, the worst match maybe is 2.5 stars, but that's still not necessarily a bad match. It's actually a pretty decent match right there. This show ended up selling out with 9,000 people in attendance. NXT TakeOver London did have more at 10,079. I think because the venue that they had was probably bigger than the venue that they had in NXT TakeOver Dallas, so I think that's probably why they sold out. That one had more people in attendance. Plus, it was but if you look at the reception on this show, everybody really praises the show. People say that it was better than WrestleMania 32. They really praised the Shinsuke Nakamura, Sami Zayn match, and even the NXT Women's Championship match, even the NXT title match they did like. And you know, everybody seemed to you know, this show, you know, everyone seemed to enjoy. You know, this was a huge show for NXT, and it flowed well. The right matches took place at the right times, and I thought the show was fantastic. If I had to rate this show, I would probably rate it at a 9.8. The only thing I have a problem with is just little nitpicky things, like the whole thing they did with doing the NXT Championship match, and the whole thing they did doing the Austin Aries Baron Corbin match. But other than that, the right person went over in every single match. The show flowed well, and it felt like it was a big show. So I totally would recommend watching the show. And this might be my favorite NXT special, but we're gonna have to wait and see. Okay, so it's still, I wasn't sure if it was still recording, because normally I accidentally left the page, but yeah, we're gonna have to wait and see. But that's pretty much it, guys. And make sure to like, comment, and subscribe subscribe, and make sure to subscribe to my CM Brothers and No One the Talkinator, and I will talk to you guys later.